Hey everyone, it is Brian here from Strigler Photography. Happy Tuesday! I hope you guys are excited, enjoying your week so far. And, we are getting closer to February, which is crazy. We just started this year. We're almost to February, which is crazy. And that's how life is, though. I mean, before you know it, we're going to be in June, July, August, and 2021 will be over, and it's like we just started this. But that's life and how quickly things go for us. But yeah, awesome stuff. So in today's little tips, I am actually going to be covering something that Elizabeth brought up, and I'm always happy to hear people. I'm always happy when people throw things out there they need help with. And, I think she posted 3 different things, and one of those we'd already covered. So I'm covering one of her questions today. I might be covering another one of her questions next week, depending on if anyone else has things they need help with. But so always feel free to put your questions, concerns out there, and I will help you out one way or the other, whether I make an actual video for you or if I reach out to you personally. All right. So awesome stuff. And before we get into it, also another thing special for her. So I told you guys I bought a bunch of random t-shirts, and I think last week I was wearing my Chippendale Rescue Ranger one. So this one, it's a mixture of Nightmare Before Christmas and Nightmare on Elm Street. So you got Jack dressed up as Freddy Krueger, which I thought was interesting. And so Elizabeth actually, from what I understand, really loves Nightmare Before Christmas. So hopefully she enjoys that, and it doesn't make her mad that he's dressed up as a killer. Anyway, all right. So let's jump into it and start talking about seating assignments or not seating assignments. Do we make people sit? Do we make people choose where they sit? That's all the things we're going to be covering today. Should you assign seats at your wedding? The funny thing about this, a year ago, this isn't one of those things that people really sat down and thought of, had to think about and this is a tough decision. A year ago, if you'd asked me to make a video on this, I probably wouldn't have, because I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It wasn't that big of a decision to make. And then this little thing called COVID happened and, kind of flipped everything upside down. And now, honestly, I think this debate, this discussion, this decision is kind of an important one. It's kind of a big one. So, do we assign seats or do we let people sit where they want to sit? That is the question. So really, I say there's 2 options, but I'm guessing there actually are some other options you can do. So assign seats. So in this situation, you're telling people where they are supposed to be sitting, and that is where you expect them to sit. So if they choose to go and sit somewhere else, that kind of screws everything up and people will get upset. In open seating, people sit wherever they really want to sit. They can sit up there, they can sit over here, they can sit back here, whatever, it doesn't matter. And all of this really applies to kind of 2 situations. The wedding ceremony and the reception, of course. So we're going to kind of go through both situations. We'll be going through the wedding ceremony first, and then we'll be talking about the reception. And, there are pros and cons to both of them. There's not one that's right and one that's wrong. Oh, I forgot to switch my face. I'm going to do that real quick because that does annoy me. I got to move my head. Every time I jump on this thing, for some reason it puts my head on that side. So now my head is hopefully on the other side. There it is. Okay, back to presenting. Okay, so let's start with assigning seats during the wedding ceremony. Kind of the good thing about that is, people will know that they're going to get to sit together. So people show up in groups. It may be a family of 5, it may be a boyfriend and girlfriend, it may be 3 people, it may be 6 people, who knows? But I have seen this happen a lot at wedding ceremonies where people show up and they're like desperately trying to find a place where everyone can sit together. And I've seen it happen a lot where they get divided, and it might be like the mother sits one spot with one kid and the dad sits somewhere else with another kid. But I've seen this happen, and it's not optimal to have to divide up families where they're sitting in different places. So one of the really good things about that is, when you have assigned seats, you're going to be sitting together. Okay. Also, it makes sure that the important people are more towards the front. So like grandparents, cousins, whomever you think is the most important, they will have a guaranteed seat toward the front of the wedding ceremony. So, they're not in the back where they can't see or hear anything. They are up front because this matters, because they matter more. And I know that sounds really bad. You should love all your guests, but those closest people should have the best experience. The also really good thing about this is with COVID, you are making sure you can space people out however you want. From what I've seen in most wedding ceremonies now is they're blocking off aisles or whatever, or different rows. But still, this just kind of controls that. You can make sure that you're putting people wherever you want to make sure that, if one family contacted you before and they're like, we're really concerned about this, we don't want grandmother to get sick, you can control that. You can make sure there's no one near grandma. Grandma has her own big protected bubble that no one is going to get close to. So that gives you that kind of control. You also can evenly distribute people to both sides, which we'll talk about later. So like half the people are on this side, half the people are on the other side. And it keeps people from bunching up in the back. I mean, you think about church, a lot of people will automatically go and sit in the back row of the church. And then you have like a few people in the front, and then you have this like giant gap of nothingness. So when you're telling people where to sit, you won't have that weird distribution. People will be kind of evenly spread out without just people hiding in the back of the church. Now, this is also kind of an option as far as assigned seats. And this is the norm. I have never seen anyone tell everyone where to sit during a wedding ceremony. I can't think of a time that has ever happened, but this happens practically at every wedding. So limited assigned seating. So the thing that happens at pretty much every wedding is reserving rows for close family and friends. Usually the first 3 rows are assigned for that family and friends, and then the rest of the seating is kind of open. So that's the norm. Another thing people will do is they'll sit people based on the side that they know. So like, are you here for the bride or the groom? Are you here for the bride or, whatever? And you will sit on that side. And as we said with the pros, kind of one of the problems with that is if you pick a side, one side could be extremely filled while the other side is extremely empty, which we've had happen before. This last year, we had that happen, and we actually moved people right before the ceremony started because it just looked so weird. We had this one side completely packed and then like 10 people on the other side. So we actually asked people to move so it wouldn't look really empty on one side. So some of the cons of assigned seating during the ceremony, it's more to plan. You've got all this other stuff you have to figure out, and now you're having to figure out where everyone's going to sit. You may not know who's coming, so it's hard to really I don't know if they're really going to be here, so where do we put them? I don't know. And then you have to have people guide them to their seats. So someone taking them and putting them where they're supposed to be. Because if you leave people to do it by themselves, they'll probably get lost. And, there's no freedom to this. People feel like they're stuck. maybe I don't want to sit here. Maybe I don't want to sit by them. I don't like that. Think back to when you were in school, and some of you may still be in school, and the teacher assigned your seats, and most kids hated that. Some kids didn't want to sit in front. Some kids didn't want to sit by this kid. So there is that problem with assigning seats to people. Now, the pros of the open seating during the ceremony, like we just said, you can sit wherever you want. You have that freedom. People are rewarded for getting there early. So people aren't going to show up late, because if they show up late, they're not going to have really any options of where they're going to sit. And it's less work for people, less stress, less people having to tell people where to go. Now, the problem with that is, people might not be able to find a seat. Like we already talked about dividing up families, and there have been times where the place was packed, and I've had people had to sit outside or had to stand up against a wall. We already talked about the big open gaps and the important people. We want them towards the front. So there are definitely cons to it as well. So let's talk about the reception. And this is where I see assigned seating more often. Like I said, I've never seen it completely assigned seating during a ceremony, but I have seen it quite often during the reception. So some of the cool things about that is, you can put together people that you think will have a good time sitting and talking with each other, people with similar interests. You might even try and hook up your cousin with some person you went to college with, because you think that they would get along really well and they should be dating. So you can kind of just pick and choose who should be sitting together, and you can also control who's not sitting with each other. If you know that your aunt does not get along with your mother, or if when they get together, they argue way too much, sit them away from each other, and that you won't have that trouble. So you can kind of avoid some bad situations as well. And you already know that everyone is going to have a seat. Now, when I say assigned seating during the reception, that doesn't mean you're going to be stuck there forever. Usually after dinner is over, people get up and they move around and they change seats and they kind of go wherever they want. But during the dinner portion is usually when they're stuck in that seat. Now, the cons of this, again, is you can't choose. You have no freedom. You have to kind of go where they tell you. And as we already said, you have to have someone directing people, or people will make a sign or little placard type things to tell you where to sit. And so it's more work. People have to try and find where they're going. So if you're doing the open, it's the same thing we kind of talked about. People have freedom. They get to choose where they want to go and less work. And the problem is, though, if you're choosing where to sit, people might be kind of in a rush, or there may be just this tension, this I don't know how to explain it, where am I going to sit? And then people are rushing to get to seats. They don't know where they should sit. They don't know who they should sit by. They don't want to upset someone because they chose to sit here versus not there. And the thought in my head when I started talking about this method is, it's that classic scene at school, or even in a prison movie, where they're at lunch. They've got their lunch tray, and they're looking around where am I going to sit? And that is a very stressful, difficult time. Which gang are you going to choose to sit with? It could, and what happens if you go over there and they reject you and they tell you can't sit there? And that's tough, again. So the other, everything is a movie to me. You should know that. The classic Forrest Gump scene where he's trying to find a seat on the bus and everyone's seats taken. You can't sit here. And, that's tough on people. So that's a big con to the open seating, is just people might have that anxiety of finding the right seat and being able to sit with the people they want. Okay. Like I said, we don't know what the norm is going to be now with COVID. Things have already changed quite a bit. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens is assigned seating something that's going to become normal, where we tell everyone where they have to sit? Are we always going to have every other bench marked off at a ceremony? I don't know. I will say one thing. While people are concerned, and this is still a big issue, having assigned seating does give you control over the situation, but it does mean you're also going to have more work and people will lose freedom. Is there a best of both worlds? Maybe. I don't know. I think it kind of depends on your situation, how many people you're having, how big the area is, how many seats there are. If you have a bunch of people that are at risk, all of that. I think that all kind of plays into it. So again, there's no right or wrong. There's just you and your situation, I guess. All right. I'm going to jump back to my face if I can. Hopefully this has been helpful. Where am I? There we go. So, Elizabeth, I hope that helped. I hope that helped some other people as well. I would say for most situations, this has been the norm. Reserving a few rows during the ceremony and then letting people sit on either side. That's become more of a thing. Receptions are almost probably 75% you sit where you want. That doesn't mean you have to follow that. You can do what you want with it. You can decide where you want people to sit. Whew. All right. So I love that. Thank you for asking a question. If other people have questions that they need help with, I'm here as always to help with that. I want you guys to have a wonderful wedding and the whole planning process as well. So you may not have noticed at the end of my slide, there was one other thing. So this is on my new website and something that I do believe in and I think is part of my process, but I also think is just important with the whole wedding planning, whatever. And so I'm going to hopefully start saying this a lot more and have it out there for people. Laugh, love, repeat. Guys, that's what weddings are about. You laugh with each other, you love each other, and then you repeat that over and over again. And as long as you kind of keep those thoughts in your mind when you're planning all this and you're doing everything, I think you guys are going to be okay. In the end, you're going to be married, and that's what matters. And, I will be back next week, and I hope this has been helpful. And if you have more questions, shoot them over to me. All right, bye, guys.